the cartel has integrated itself into U.S. society. The leader of the Sinaloa cartel that they busted with the fentanyl this week was living in Oregon. He wasn't living south of the border. And so that kind of caught me off guard, that they had integrated themselves that much into society. In Northern California, in talking with my sheriff at the Border Sheriff's Association, there are communities and counties that have been taken over by the cartels north of San Francisco, where they've gone into small farms to operate grow houses.
Yeah.
People go out in those rural areas and they don't come back.
Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. We got a special guest today, Jonathan Lines from Arizona. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Were you born in Arizona?
No, I was actually born in Utah. My parents were going to school at Brigham Young, but my family has been in Arizona since about 1870.
Oh, wow.
So I missed an opportunity to be born there.
Well, I don't know that it matters. So let's go back into your history a little bit. You said you were born. Were you born in Salt Lake?
No, I was born in Provo.
Oh, in Provo.
Yeah.
Okay. What was that like growing up?
You know, well, I was there for probably a year and a half, and then my parents went back to Yuma. My dad had a degree in graphic design art. Went to work for a corporation in Los Angeles. We lived in Buena Park, and he decided after 3 months that was not the life for him. So he came back home and joined back in with my grandfather's construction company, and that's where I am currently spending most of my time when I'm not on the border or when I'm not giving tours and working with people running for office to help them understand border policy.
What was it like growing up in Yuma?
Yuma's an amazing little town. It's an hour and a half from really anything big in Mexico over to Mexicali, and then you're about 2.5 hours from Phoenix, 2.5 hours from San Diego. I think we have the best of both worlds, being able to access the beach in a couple of hours and still have, an amazing way of life. Yuma is predominantly agriculture and military. So I grew up kind of in that sphere of helping and assisting in the agricultural industry, and then promoting Yuma, Arizona. Yuma, Arizona is the most patriotic city in Arizona. One of the most patriotic cities in the United States, just because of our support for the military and the mission there. We've got an Army base, which is Yuma Proving Ground, and we've got Marine Corps Air Station Yuma.
Well, what you say it's really patriotic there. What are the politics like in that area? Because the New Mexico, Arizona, it's a weird place.
It is.
I guess
it's a struggle, right? Yuma, Arizona has had the fastest growing registration within for the Republican Party within within the state. And now, for the first time ever, Republicans outnumber Democrats in registration. And the majority of the people that hold office in Yuma, Arizona are Republican. And then even people who are registered as Democrats, they still are extremely conservative. So kind of like Southern Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, there's surprisingly a lot of border towns are pretty blue. Like El Paso's been blue for as long as I can remember.
Yep.
Which is wild because there's a military base there and they have to deal. Like it's one thing to be far removed from a problem and be able to compartmentalize is another thing entirely for your community to be taken over by assholes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And have to deal with it on a daily basis and then continue to vote for the people who allowed it. That has always been mind-boggling to
I've
me.
never understood that. And we've taken a little bit of a different approach. I mean, we don't get combative in that political realm, sitting down talking about policies and why they matter. I think that the border being such a problem and fentanyl being such a problem, and where it's had the greatest impact, national Statistics are like 1 in 100,000. Maybe it's a little bit more for fentanyl deaths, poisonings. And along the border, it's 20. So we have seen over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, even since Trump's first term and more of an emphasis on border security and national security, we've seen more of a swing in our county and in that area of the state where people realize that, we're exposed and it's time to do something about it.
Well, so I guess let's go back to your childhood a little bit. What'd you do in high school? What was high school like down there? Because it's kind of a small area. It's bigger now, but It was smaller then.
I'm a Yuma criminal. So that's the name of my high school, Yuma High Criminals. Started out.
Is that apropos? I don't know what the crime's like down there.
Crime's a little bit higher, just because of the border, just because of illegal people coming across the border. But Yuma High School started when Arizona was a territory, and the territorial prison had been located in Yuma, Arizona. So the worst of the worst were some of the people that came out of Tombstone. They were in prison there.
Like Doc Holliday and people like that.
Well, Doc Holliday came through. Doc Holliday came through. He was actually came through on the way to San Diego.
There has to be a statue of Doc Holliday in Tombstone, Arizona. If there's not, we need to make that happen, right?
There's not, and I've been there several times.
Val Kilmer, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't even have to be the actual Doc Holliday. It should just be Val Kilmer at this point.
I have a picture of Val Kilmer on my mantle in my bedroom. It says, "I'm your Huckleberry," that he signed, and it's one of my favorites.
Hilarious.
We take... We've had 17 exchange students. I've got 11 children, but we've had 17 exchange students on top of that, and we always take them down to Tombstone so they can understand the Wild West.
Are they from like mission countries and stuff like that?
They're from, I've had lots from Germany. I've had several from all of the northern Scandinavian countries, almost all of the northern Scandinavian countries. I've had one from Vietnam, and I've had one from Taiwan. And then, primarily those countries. We enjoyed the German exchange students, but our Scandinavian, just because they were able to assimilate a little bit more, those from the Asian or Southeast Asian countries, a little bit more difficult to assimilate. We don't have a whole lot of Asians in our community, and so taking them other places where they could actually see somebody and something that they were familiar with was a lot of fun.
Well, luckily now you can just use your phone to translate too.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, it's a whole new world. I'm sure you remember this because you were probably in the thick of it, but a couple of years ago they were selling these individual, and I think they still do, these individual devices that are translators. You can just wear it around your neck or whatever. Now you don't need it. It's just everything's on your phone now. Makes it quite a bit simpler.
For a lot of the people coming across the border, I would use Google Translate just because we had 116 different languages being spoken. It was extremely important to be able to have some type of translation device. I ordered some Meta glasses, and supposedly they will do real-time translation as well.
Is that they did a deal with Ray-Ban or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I've looked at those. I'm kind of curious to see how they work.
Well, I'm supposed to get mine this week and get my prescription put in, and then we'll see.
Well, they also have the open ear sound, which is kind of interesting because it just like based on the placement on the frame, it just projects sound into your ear.
Have you ever seen those shocks, kind of like running?
Yeah. Well, I use the Bose open ears.
Okay, all right.
Right, which kind of sits right here inside your ear, but it projects sound this way.
Yeah.
Instead of like
in the ear,
being butted up into your ear because you can still hear everything around you, which I like. As somebody who travels around in public with a gun all the time,
situational awareness is critical.
What the fuck's going on around me? Yeah. So how did you get into, aside from just being in a border town, I guess? Let's go through the paces here. So you go to high school, college after that,
and served a mission in South America for the LDS Church.
Whereabouts?
Uruguay and Argentina. And then traveled to almost 36 different countries with my wife, kind of immersing ourselves in different cultures, coming home, starting a family, and then being involved somewhat politically as a volunteer. I was later then recruited to be the chairman of the and ran for and won my election to be chairman of the Arizona Republican Party. Did that for 2 years, worked with Trump in his first 2 years, and then after having spent too much time on the road away from my family, decided to focus on my business. I had 169 employees before Obamacare. I maintain 49 right now in our construction, roofing, installation, acoustical business, and then decided to get a little bit more active back into local politics. I feel like that's where you can make a difference. Started assisting, helped my sheriff run, first Republican sheriff to be elected in our county in 100 years. Leon Wilmot, got him elected, and then worked with different people that wanted to come and see the border, decided to run for office, ran for Yuma County Supervisor. There was a vacancy, which is like a commissioner in other counties.
Yeah.
And then started working, and because of the relationships that I had developed with a lot of the elected officials, state, local, and federal, some of the congressmen started turning to me and asking for assistance on understanding border policy, working with local border patrol, working with the military in our small town was extremely critical. One of the things that we had done under Obama with Sheriff Wilmot, he cross-deputized all federal law enforcement, and so that we could prosecute on a local level those crimes, and so that he could build bigger cases. Anyway, so I ran and then started working with my congressman a little bit more to enhance and develop better border policies, or to enforce some of the laws that were on the books. And then started hosting CODELs, so having Homeland Security there. I've testified before two different congressional committees on some of the challenges that we've seen over the last 4 years at the border. What happened under Trump, and what was a failure under Biden.
How long would you say you've been into the border security thing? Like what year? Whereabouts did that start for you?
It probably started when I was chairman of the county. So probably about 18, 20 years now. Been focused on border security.
It's like the first Bush administration, or towards the end of it.
Yeah, and Bush came twice. First to jump at the free fall school.
Yeah.
And then to celebrate additional walls that he put up. Trump wall is similar to the Bush wall that was set up around the South County, Arizona, in Yuma. And Trump took an 18-foot wall and then turned it into a 30-foot wall. And got most of that taken care of before he was out of office.
And what? So you're
border security started to be a little bit more personal to me.
Yeah.
Because I had friends and family that lost their lives to fentanyl and other drugs along the border. My best friend from high school, his mom came home and found him overdosing as a grown man. He had recently moved back home, gone through a divorce. It was rough. Somebody gave him what he thought was codeine, ended up being laced with fentanyl, buried him. Lady that assists my wife, she left our home, walked in, found her 18-year-old son suffering the consequences of fentanyl. Again, he thought it was codeine. And when they're pushing those for $2.50 to $5, it's an easy score along the border. And so I've seen families torn apart and realized that it was time to do a little bit more.
Yeah, I think the raw number since 2015 is something like 300,000 people.
Yeah.
Which is, 100 9/11s. And we don't seem to be terribly interested in solving that problem even right now, to be honest. I mean, there's certainly the trade war stuff with China puts some damper on them to some degree. My personal opinion is that we should have pushed into Mexico and created a DMZ with them. That government can't be trusted.
No.
They elected a globalist down there, just like Canada just did, another one. We can't allow consequences are what matter in policy, no matter what it is, whether it's
we haven't had consequences.
Yeah, whether it's raising your children or managing employees or running a government, consequences are what matter. And yeah, we've done nothing to that effect. Still, we've held nobody accountable for all the several 100,000 Americans that are dead.
One of the things that happened this week that I am extremely happy about is that, and I spent I was invited to DOJ about a month ago, had the opportunity to sit down with Kash Patel and talk for a little bit. I had Pam Bondi and Morgan Ortagus and Laura Trump come to the border to see it firsthand just before the election. And I appreciate the fact that Pam has been aggressive going after the Sinaloa cartel, which operates in our area. They had a major 4-state bust this week. And I've invited her to come back. I've got several states' attorney generals that are going to come in the next 2 weeks so they can better understand the border policy and what needs to happen. With all of the visitors that I've had, every one of them has said that it's not a border problem anymore. It's a problem that's occurring on their front doorsteps throughout the United States, and so it's time to do something about it.
Well, about 80%, 80 to 83%, depending on the year, based on my research, of the people actually trafficking the fentanyl into America are American citizens.
Yeah.
Being paid by the cartels,
Yeah.
in addition to police being paid by cartels, government employees. There's been a number. Arizona is kind of a hotbed for it, and it sprawls from there. I mean, we've tracked real estate money laundering scams all the way up as far north as Iowa that are involving specifically the Sinaloa cartel. And again, no one's done anything to stop it. It's very bizarre because there's so much low-hanging fruit. There's so many commissioners and mayors and police and real estate agents and bankers that are involved in all this stuff. It seems like if you just pull one stick out, the whole thing will crumble, and I don't know what anybody's waiting for here.
So what our sheriff has done locally, they now have a financial crimes unit, and they're working with state and federal, and they've identified these banking accounts in our area, and so they're building a bigger case. My brother, as a border patrol he arrested one of his own guys. They watched them go down to the border, load up all types of narcotics, and then bring them back up to the interstate.
Yeah.
And they arrested him. So I've seen on a local level where our state, local, and federal has done a fantastic job and is ramping up to do a better job. I think that one of the most important things is having an administration that will support you, because all of the crimes that were referred to the U.S. Attorney General under Biden, almost nothing was prosecuted.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Right?
Same with Obama. I was there.
Same with Obama.
At USCIS and FDNS, Fraud Detection, National Security at the time. And one of the things, just because I was in the Bay Area, so one of the biggest things going on there was subverting the naturalization process through this medical form called an N648. It basically allows you to skip the line. You don't have to learn the language. You don't have to take the test. You just go immediately to the front of the line and skip all the requirements and become a citizen, basically, right?
Wow.
So these doctors were just writing people dementia. It's like, this person's got a full-time job. They don't have dementia. Come on, man. It's like a 60-year-old Asian person that's, and by the way, just genetically speaking, they don't get dementia very frequently because of their diet, and also stay cogent quite a bit longer into life than white people do. Frankly, on average, it's not always the case, but we're looking into this, and it's hundreds of naturalized citizens. And by the way, once somebody becomes naturalized, they can start to sponsor other people.
Right.
All their kids get naturalized, their grandkids, everybody, right? Yeah. So talking about thousands and thousands of people that essentially were paroled into this country illegally. And we sent these cases up to ICE, and like, we can't prosecute this. They won't let us. I'm like, I'm going the fuck out of here. I can't.
Chain migration.
Yeah. That's really what it is. I mean, it's like people, the one that gets people is the anchor baby thing, which is not, it's not in the law. There's nothing in the INA or USC about, it is not the case. And I get into arguments with people about this all the time. It's like these misunderstandings about the law because a certain phrase has been repeated over and over. two illegal immigrants come here, they have a child, that child is an American citizen. Neither of those two parents are. And that's what's been happening recently. All this hubbub you hear in the press about Trump deporting U.S. citizens. No, he deported the parents, and they chose to take their baby.
Right.
That's what really happened, right? So no, that's not legal.
I love that one of the reporters asked Homan about that, and he says, well, we're taking care of families. We're keeping them together.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just these misunderstandings. The anchor baby thing, though, pales in comparison to chain migration, where all it takes is one family member, the older the better, by the way, which is what makes this particular abuse so bad, to sponsor everybody. Yeah. And, you know, I don't think they're necessarily bad people. They probably just don't want to be in China because China sucks, right? And I understand that. But there's a process to this stuff, right? You have to show that you're assimilated and you're a contributor. Yep. And then we'll just let you in. Yeah. For the most part, right? I mean, it's the barrier to get in. It can cost a lot of money and it can be time consuming. But if you're a good person that contributes, then you're pretty much on your way.
So I talked to a lot of those people that came over from China, down on the border as they were lining up, waiting for Border Patrol to process them.
That's a new thing, by the way. Yeah. The Chinese didn't used to come through the southern border.
Thousands of them.
Yeah.
Thousands of them. It was sad listening to some of their stories. You know, I've heard a little bit of everything. But yeah, the thing that's most frustrating to the people that have immigrated legally is the fact that they walked in and were paroled, you know, within 72 hours, down to 48 hours, and then they were free. Where you have people who integrated into society, who paid their dues, who took up to 10 years to be legal. And I think that's where we've made most of our strides with voter registration, to be honest with you, just because they were sick and tired of the lawlessness.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff procedurally that probably needs to get dealt with. The current INA, I think, is antiquated and based on the idea that most people are behaving as individuals and not behaving on behalf of a foreign government, right? Which is a dangerous assumption to make in 2025. So it's just not true anymore. Right. So I think we need to make some major adjustments to this, including. So right now, you have to be here for some amount of time to acquire a green card and have a good purpose for having acquired it. And then you have to spend 5 years as a permanent resident before you can apply for naturalization. I think it should be 10. Because when this is just market economics, right? When there's a lot of demand, you increase the requirement.
Right.
You raise the cost.
Yeah.
Whatever the cost is.
Raise the bar.
You raise the cost. And we need to raise the cost for citizenship right now.
Yeah. I think Trump's doing a great job with his golden ticket, right?
It's a good idea, yeah.
Sold quite a few of them.
I don't have a problem with people coming here that can afford $5 million,
right? Just
to give us $5 million. That's not a bad actor most of the time.
No,
we'll get and they're vetting these people,
and they're going to be on somebody's radar, right?
Yeah. If you're the kind of international operator that has access to that kind of cash, you're on somebody's radar.
Absolutely,
you can't hide from anybody these days. So we know if they're dickheads or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good thing. And I do think we probably need to have some kind of moratorium on immigration for a while. Like there's 20 million people in the country that don't belong here. And when there's a hole in your bucket, you don't keep pouring water into it.
It's like the little boy in the dam, right?
Yeah.
Just keep plugging the holes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to find out basically who's here first. Some type of an assessment. Return the people who are bad actors who have come here illegally. I like the idea of self-deporting so that you have the opportunity to come back.
Well, that needs to get passed into law because Kristi Noem can say it.
But until they do it.
Yeah, but until it's law, like it should be relatively easy to amend the INA to like the punishment side of it, because that doesn't require an act of Congress. That's a administrative act. So change the punishment from a 5-year bar to a permanent bar right now. If you get caught in this country illegally, you're permanently barred from ever re-entering. Just, I mean, again, raise the bar a little bit, and people will do the right thing typically.
There was a commission from one of the congressmen out of Texas that lasted for, I don't know, 20 years. That tried to reform this, and then you had the Gang of Eight proposal. But even going back to the first time that the Supreme Court referred this to Congress, I mean, it took them like 20 years after the question of illegal entry. So I don't know that we've ever actually gotten it right from the beginning. And so somebody's got to take a good, hard look at it and come up with something. I mean, you know, even under Reagan, how many times did we just legalize everybody that was here? I think that happened twice, right?
Yeah. It's this is a debate that I have pretty frequently because I hear people call themselves Reagan Republicans. I'm like, so what do you mean when you say that? Because that sounds like Democrat to me. Like
what do you base it as? What do you base your philosophy on?
Yeah, Reagan Republicanism is allowing illegal immigrants to stay here. It's doing away, or it's creating no-fault divorce. It's doing away with mental institutions. It's raising taxes 5 out of the 8 years when you're in office. Like, all right, well, cool. That's not.
What do you believe?
You can't just say Republican,
right?
And that means something. So I don't know, but yeah, that's a big problem. This amnesty idea.
I think that's one of the challenges that the party is facing right now. Right? What does the party actually stand for? What is the platform? And I sat on the platform committee, or was an alternate for the platform committee for the RNC for a few years, and it's just interesting to see old school Republicans push back against Trump and populism, or whatever they want to call it, but national security and border security, and unequivocally saying we've got to establish laws and we've got to hold people accountable. I think that's really what Republicans should stand for.
You'd think so, yeah. I mean, it's just mom and dad, right? Like the Democrats should be looking to take care of people and in an empathetic way, and the Republicans should look to take care of people in a, I guess, consequence environment. And those two things typically balance each other out pretty well.
Yeah.
But we haven't had that for a while. We've had two parties pushing entitlements, just different entitlements, and that's not going to work. That's why we have $37 trillion in debt, frankly. Yeah. And it's not getting any better now. I mean, do you think there's any will to even solve these problems? I mean, it's shocking to me that like the New Mexico and Arizona state governments are pretty left right now. If you believe any of those elections are real, the New Mexico one was definitely real. Arizona, Katie Hobbs presided over her own certification. That seems problematic, but who knows? Let's just say for the sake of argument, they are real. Do you sense any will out of either of those states to actually do something about this? Because I know California is not going to do anything.
I think there are a lot more conservative people in California. I think that's where you really have generational challenges with elections.
Yeah, in the Inland Empire in Southern California, like everything below LA
is extremely conservative. Yeah. Right, and then just out of Reno, when you get up into that Tahoe area,
same.
I was there just before the election. I didn't ever see a Biden sign. I didn't ever see a Kamala sign. Everything was Trump, especially those rural ag guys. I think Arizona will have a little bit of a reckoning over the next couple of years. We're already seeing where our legislature is, holding the Democrats accountable for some of the decisions that they have made. And I want more of that, holding people accountable. I think that this next election is interesting. We've got 2 candidates for governor that Trump has endorsed. And so we've got 2 great options. They're both personal friends of mine, with Karen Robeson and Andy Biggs. Andy Biggs led several of the Codels coming down to Yuma, and I did fundraising for the Arizona legislature with Karen Robeson. So you've got 2 good selections. It's just Arizona politics has been so interesting lately, and I look at that election where our state treasurer won with a significant margin, more than any other Republican. And yet the other up-ballot tickets were lost. And she ran her own race. she is an extremely conservative Republican, and yet you had such disparity. In our county, we held people accountable. We prosecuted 4 people who voted more than one time. And so I was grateful to see our Democrat county attorney go after these people after they were referred to him from our sheriff's office. And that these people, that they went to trial. A couple of them copped a plea, but 2 went to trial, and they were held accountable. And it was publicized. So I'd like to see a lot more of that. There's a deterrent effect, right, when you hold people accountable for crimes that they commit. Yeah. I'd like to see a lot more of that.
Yeah, I mean, at least makes them change it up a little bit, right? I mean, one of the things that you do in warfare is you try to funnel the enemy into, we'll call it a kill box in the military, right? But even in law enforcement, you try to create these, I guess, funnels for people. And when you're talking about the Sonoran Desert, it is there's some terrain and environmental factors out there that make it challenging. I mean, it can be a very porous situation if it's not attended to, right? I mean, there's a lot, even with the wall there. People will dig under that thing, or over it, or whatever.
We had 4 tunnels dug, 4 drug tunnels and smuggling tunnels built in Yuma County.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like, what you're out there on the ground working on this stuff. What kind of tech are we? Are we using GPR to find these tunnels, or I mean, because there's ground penetrating radar now that can be outfitted into a plane. You can fly over and see where underground disturbances are.
The first one was found about 20 years ago. Second one was found about 10 years ago. And the last 2 were found while they were digging. It's a vast border. We've got 126 miles for the Yuma sector.
Yeah.
And you have state, local, and federal working together. You had the troopers who had a task force that was assigned to the border from the state level. You had Border Patrol and Sheriff. Operation Stone Garden is where local law enforcement receives additional assistance from the federal government to aid Border Patrol. So we had Operation Stone Garden deployed in Yuma, Arizona, and we had police departments and the sheriff's office taking advantage of that to aid and assist. Some of the best tech that was deployed, aside from the cameras, was some ground-based sensors. And so that they were able to pick up and then differentiate. We just completed, even just right before Biden left office, new ground-based sensors based on fiber technology that runs in parallel across the border. And that was especially important in the areas where we had an 8-mile gap. One of the challenges in that area was securing our agriculture so that we didn't have Haitians and Cubans coming across trying to give birth in the fields, which we had in the beginning. And so based upon securing our agriculture and our food security, we went to, I called up Senator Kelly. He came off the floor. He brought Mayorkas down to Yuma, and we were able to close 2 of the biggest gaps directly adjacent to Yuma. And I'm happy to report that we have military and Border Patrol back on the border in our southern area where most of the narcotics are coming across, closing that up. After all of that, you talk about a funnel, we still have an 8-mile gap where we have a reservation. And sitting down with that tribe and trying to get them to come to the table and aid and assist. Now, Border Patrol is in that area. They're a river people. They have full access to the river, which is our natural divider between Baja California and Yuma, Arizona on our western border. So those are some of the things that we'd like to get buttoned up. But they are deploying more technology just because of the Yuma Proving Ground. They've done a lot of testing with drones, testing deployment along the border. So they were able to interdict, and we found a pill press where they were making fentanyl just across the border. We were able to shut that down with the officials from Mexico aiding and assisting. But here's the thing. Mexico was making, not just illegally, but legally, millions of dollars off of these people that were coming through their country. because they would force them to buy a little card that gave them 1 year of residency in Mexico. That's why the MPP protocols worked, because they'd already actually established residency in Mexico. But they would toss that. So Mexico didn't want to cut off illegal immigration to the United States because they were making so much money. They were charging anywhere from $150 to $1,500 for that one little document coming across. The sheriff and I have got garbage bags full of those that have been discarded.
So what are we doing to hold the Mexican government accountable for any of this? Because I haven't seen anything.
You know, aside from the tariffs, that's really been the only thing that they've done. President Sheinbaum last week rejected Trump's offer to deploy military in to assist, like we had done in Colombia and other countries, to aid their local law enforcement. It was interesting, though, that prior to Trump coming into office, the Mexican government deployed the Mexican army to the border,
right,
in the area of Yuma and around Tijuana and other areas, just because of the corruption. In San Luis Rio, Colorado, we had more than 500 assassinations of politicians and law enforcement during the Biden administration. And it should have been an average, roughly. I mean, any number is unacceptable, but their averages were like 30 a year. But we were over 500 in those 4 years. So the cartels and the New Generation Cartel and the Sinaloa Cartel, they were fighting against each other for control of those areas along the border. And it was incredibly dangerous to even cross the border.
You're talking about the Jalisco guys.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there was some dust ups there, and I mean, we've tried a bunch of stuff in the past. We've tried pitting cartels against each other. We've tried picking a winner. It turns out dealing with terrorists isn't something that works particularly well, because you just end up having to fight them later on. I know we have this this fantasy that it's dealing with one group is better than dealing with a bunch, and I guess maybe to some degree that's true, but I think that our folks compare it too much to like Italian organized crime, where it's or even the Black OC up in the Northeast back in the day, where they kind of like the old guys maintain control of things, no families, no civilians. It's all like,
it's not like that now.
No, I mean the Mexican government, or I'm sorry, the Mexican cartels, all the cartels, not even just the Mexicans, all of them. They don't give a shit about any of the rules.
No.
Right? They'll kill your whole family.
Yeah.
They'll kidnap cops and politicians and go after people like that. So there's only one way to deal with that kind of organization.
Blunt force.
Yeah, you just got to kill everybody.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you show up and you're part of a cartel, I don't think we should be arresting people that are foreign nationals invading our country to do violence. We should kill them, because that's what you do when somebody invades your country.
And they publicize their violence as an enforcement measure, and there's no way to reasonably work out any type of a truce with them. They're all about the profit motive and control, and nothing can get in the way for them.
Yeah, and then it isn't like an honor-based culture; it's a fear-based culture, which means you people that haven't I guess experienced this before don't understand it, but it tears the humanity out of people when you're constantly afraid. I mean, think of like the Hunger Games or something like that. You're constantly afraid for your own life, and you just go into complete survival mode. This isn't an excuse, by the way. This is just the reality of the situation. Yeah. These people that were already inclined to violence are now inclined to like constant states of violence and never lets up. My
cousins had lived in Chihuahua, Mexico for 120 years, and they grew peaches, apples, and pears for Mexico and for export.
There's a big LDS community down there. There was. I don't know if it still exists.
Well, there's
a bunch of people got murdered a couple years ago.
And those were the reorganized with the polygamists.
The ones that left their kids were on the side of the road and they had to hitchhike back to. Oh my God, that's crazy.
But my cousins weren't part of that group. They were part of the mainline LDS church, And the cartel came in and took over and took control of 90% of their orchards. And
they've been there for what, 150 years or something like that?
Yeah. And so
that's wild.
they lost everything, and they now live in Idaho. And my uncle lost 100% of his life.
Churchill said that appeasement is feeding the crocodile hoping he eats you last.
Yeah.
Like, we need to stop trying to make friends. There are times in war where, you know, you make friends with a casual enemy to defeat a greater enemy. That's how it works sometimes. This is not one of those times.
No.
Like, there can be no compromise with these people.
No.
You have to stomp them out. And I think the tariffs against Mexico are a good start, but I think we have to shut down trade with them until they get it solved.
100%.
Entirely. Like, completely close that border. Nobody can go either way, and that's going to suck for some of our people too. But close that border completely and put the onus on them. Like, this is your problem.
You fix it.
Yeah, you have your country, which you're in control of, and then you have a 568-mile border with Guatemala that represents the other threat to us right now, and you should probably police that as well.
One of the challenges that Pam Bondi pointed out this week is that the cartel has integrated itself into U.S. society. The leader of the Sinaloa cartel that they busted with the fentanyl this week was living in Oregon. He wasn't living south of the border. And so that kind of caught me off guard, that they had integrated themselves that much into society.
Yeah.
In Northern California, in talking with my sheriff at the Border Sheriff's Association, there are communities and counties that have been taken over by the cartels north of San Francisco, where they've gone into small farms to operate grow houses.
Yeah.
People go out in those rural areas and they don't come back.
Yeah, I mean, there was El Paso had, and this is just TDA, by the way, Tren de Aragua. El Paso, San Antonio, Dripping Springs, right over here, about 15 miles this way.
Really?
They arrested 40 of them like 3 months ago, 40 TDA guys.
Wow.
Colorado Springs obviously was one of the big ones. Chicago was one of the big ones as well. But it was all over the country. It wasn't just like any. We're closer to a border here, but Colorado is not. You know, it's just a pipeline, I guess. That corridor. So the I-35 corridor here that goes all the way up to Minnesota, and then whatever, I can't remember the name of the highway that goes like up through Flagstaff and all that stuff.
Well, you've got 15 that goes off to the side, and then you've got the I-17.
17 is the one that goes all the way up to Montana, right? If I'm not mistaken. So yeah, it's like, that's why we have these. What is it called? I can't remember the name. The internal border checks, right? So on 17, 35, and there's one on 95.
We've got one going to San Diego, and they are actually taking down one just outside of Yuma, and they're going to put it further out into a rural area where more people are coming across. Yeah, you got. I mean, that it makes sense. Like, you got to put it on. It's got to be around a freeway and at a choke point, like a place that's far enough north where they're actually rejoining. That funnel, right?
Yeah,
that you were talking about.
It's just basic. It's odd that we didn't do that when we designed all this, to be honest, because that's just common sense.
Well, with Governor Ducey, we actually did that with the shipping containers. And then the Biden administration sued him as he was leaving office, and sued him personally. And we had to take all of those containers off of the border. But they were actually creating that choke point and funneling everybody to one area where they were coming across.
So there's other than Yuma, I guess you focus probably a lot of your attention there, but you said even in Yuma there's still an 8-mile gap?
Yep.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
What about like Douglas?
Douglas area is being closed up right now. There's one reservation over there, the Tohono O'odham, which is extremely rural, and it's kind of like hill country where it's difficult to access, and you've got an extreme Sonoran desert environment. But in some of those areas, they've been able to do it, and it's just getting the cooperation with the tribes now that really will be our weakest link in our border security policy. But getting them to come to the border, they have that Roosevelt rule for that first 100. What is it, 100 yards, 100 feet coming off of the international boundary line. But the challenge really is in those areas, the extreme conditions. Like if we had to do that in Yuma, we would be doing it in the riverbed.
Yeah.
In an area where Border Patrol and the military who have been deployed there said, yeah, this is untenable just because you can't secure those areas just because of the growth in and around and the fact that those channels in the river change often, right?
Yeah.
You might have to do something like Texas has done, but Texas is primarily private, where Arizona, you have state, local, and federal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a challenge. You know, I mean, the just very basic security principles is if you're trying to create a standoff position, you have to clear the land, right? So if I've got a big building on a big property, I don't want trees that come all the way up to the side of my building. I need probably about 100 meters of space and then big-ass lights that flash down on that area. Difficult to do that for whatever, 2,700 miles of border, obviously.
They've done a good job. Most people don't realize, though, that in California and Arizona and even in other states, the area where they erected the fence was well within the international boundary, even up to like 2 miles. And so most people, when they were claiming asylum, were actually already in the United States. It was there as a deterrent and a tool, but they were already in the United States, so they could claim asylum. There are very few areas in the sand dunes where they filmed some of the Star Wars scenes.
Yeah, back in the day. Yeah.
Back in the day. Those are directly on the border. But then you have blowing sands that blow up against, create mounds. And we actually had people who put ramps up and were driving over.
I mean, there's ingenuity involved for sure.
Where there's a will, there's a way, right?
Yeah, I think we should push the border south till we get to points that are actually defensible.
Yeah.
If Mexico has no intent on being a partner in this situation, then they're an enemy. Yeah. There's no neutral elements in this. And you guys, between the what is it, Tohono Res that's over there, and then Nogales and Yuma, it's a lot to secure without help from somebody else.
So it's been great. The military has redeployed, and now they actually can act. They're not just restricted to observation mode. They can step in and assist Border Patrol. But one of the greatest challenges over the last 4.5 years was that Border Patrol officials were spending all of their time processing people. And they weren't even able to process them very well, because how do you research someone's life when you've got 2,000 people a day coming across, and when the other countries from which these people have fled aren't providing any assistance, and in many cases they're glad that they're out of their country. So they're not going to give you good background information on who is being vetted to come in. The individual who was arrested last week for killing a businessman, I think it was in LA, came across in Yuma. And so he was vetted and he was allowed to come across. And he targeted an Israeli businessman and murdered him. Yeah,
there's I mean, there was this part of it was definitely done intentionally by the Democratic Party. 100%. And probably some people in the Republican Party as well, but definitely by the Democrats. I mean, they allowed 20 million people to come into our country illegally. And now they've played their hand now. It's very obvious what they wanted to do is try to get an individual trial for each one of them. And we've mapped that out. It's going to take 58.5 years to do what they're asking. And most of these people, except for the babies, are going to be retired by then.
Well, and the fact that they are focused on a Maryland ban instead of an illegal immigrant, an illegal individual who's come into this country who is a known associate of MS-13 and some of the most dangerous and prolific gangs, aside from Tren de Aragua and others. So I think that they've overplayed their hand, and they're at an all-time low. I mean, Chuck Schumer, it's interesting. trashing Trump, and then they asked him about his polling being at an all-time low, and he goes, "Yeah, it's kind of fluky.
Yeah, it's just
ebbs
polls,
and flows, right?"
Yeah, yeah. It's all very transparent, But regardless of that, still action is required. So
it's past time, right? I mean, and I appreciate Trump's just got 100 days under his belt. And I hope that he can get the right people into position. I feel like we've got a good start with Pam and Kash Patel there. Holman, I think, is doing an exceptional job, but allowing Border Patrol, just simply allowing people to do their job. That's what they signed up for. Allow them to do their job. Allow them to exhaust their resources and then prosecute, which hasn't happened in years.
Yeah, it will be a nice change of pace, for sure.
We don't have enough judges to prosecute right now either.
Well, that's been the case as far back as George W. Bush. I mean, I think during the Obama administration, one of the ways that the Republicans tried to jam up his administration, one is voting like 60 times to repeal Obamacare, even though they didn't have the votes to do it. But then, by the way, in 2017, when they had the votes, they voted twice, and 7 and 9 Republicans respectively voted no.
Right.
So they didn't actually care about it, right? And then one of the other ways
it was grandstanding.
Yeah, it was nonsense. One of the other ways was they refused to put those immigration judges in. I think there was something, if I remember the numbers correctly, it was something like there's 512 federal immigration judge billets, and they only had 275 full, so just over half. Well, it's still like there's still about 100 and something open billets right now.
Yeah. It was interesting. Nancy Pelosi tipped her hat when she said they need them down in Florida. They need to come in and pick this stuff and so on and so forth. And there's a lot of people in business who would love and welcome that type of labor.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things that I did back in 2013, working with ICE, was the image program. And that's going in and subjecting myself to an audit by ICE of 5 years, so I could demonstrate best hiring practices, so I could demonstrate to my community. And we were one of 2 contracting companies in Yuma, Arizona that worked with ICE to set an example to say we are not going to hire and we will never hire people who have come to this country illegally. Just before COVID, there was a report came out of Washington or LA Times where they talked about the fact that up to 75% of all manual labor in the LA basin was undocumented. So the cartel sponsored these people to come here, and they never actually are able to come out into the daylight. They're subjected to the cartel, and they're here paying off a debt, right? And there are legitimate companies here in the United States that take advantage of that cheap labor. And people, again, need to be held accountable.
Well, this is one of the things I wrote one of my master's theses on. I wrote 2 of them. One of them was on the U.S. energy grid and how to protect it. We won't get into that because it's granular. But the other one was my actual capstone thesis was the similarities and differences between the U.S.-Mexico border and policy and the Germany-Poland border and policy. This is back in the early 2010s. Germany was having this same problem with Polish immigrants coming in and basically siphoning money off of there. Like, you get the cheap labor, but how much are you paying in expenses? Are they circulating money into the economy, or are they just taking it back to Poland, whatever, right? So they, and for better or worse, I think it worked pretty well, actually. The results were extremely good at the time before they allowed mass migration of Africans, right? It's like non-cultural fits, which is that's always a mistake, but Germany issued federal work permits to any Polish person that was verified by their government. Unless you were a criminal or on the run or something like that, you could probably get one easy enough. And they put all of the onus on the German business owner. If you hire anybody that doesn't have that and you don't verify it through our system, then you don't get fined. Your business is gone. We take your business, liquidate all of it, and it's ours.
Wow.
Yep. That's consequence. Right.
That's a consequence.
If there was a program like that in the U.S. where U.S. employers lost everything,
hold them accountable.
Yeah. Then they would stop.
It's hard for me to compete against a company that is willing to hire
you as a business owner, but also hard for people in the labor market to compete.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So
100%.
this isn't one of those things that's top or bottom. This
No.
is the entire spectrum,
It affects
from employer
everybody.
all the way down, and
Yeah.
then obviously passed on to the consumer to some degree, because while the cost of these products might come down, inflation goes up, and labor inflation.
Detrimental across the board. Even the guy that cuts my grass drove around with a Trump sticker, and I said, well, why did you put that on there? I said, aren't you going to have some problems back home in your neighborhood? And he goes, everybody that I know is voting for him. Why? Because these illegals that are coming into the United States are taking our jobs and doing it for cheaper than what we are willing to do it for. And it took him 11 years to immigrate to become a U.S. citizen. He says, I'm fighting for my right to maintain, and even at a landscaping level.
Yeah, I think this is why it didn't make sense to a lot of people what was going on with the Democratic Party. And it became clear. Like I've had to spend a lot of time explaining to people how this works about congressional districting and whatnot. But they were like, "Well, these conservative Catholics aren't coming over here and voting for liberals. That's just not going to happen." I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. They're not going to vote it for anybody. They're getting put into." Like illegal immigrants, as the law says right now, get counted in the census. And if you take like a deep blue district, let's say El Paso is one on the border.
Tucson, Arizona.
Tucson is one, right? Any university town. I mean,
Yeah.
Phoenix to some degree, although the suburbs of Phoenix are pretty conservative.
And it's with ESAs, we saw a change
Yeah.
in the downtown areas because
It's gotten quite a bit better.
Yeah, they've wanted more of an opportunity, but Tucson really hasn't changed.
Yeah, no, Tucson's not great. And so let's say you take Tucson, you pour in X number of illegals, and a congressional district is something like 786,000 people. You pour in enough, and you split that one blue district into two, and now they get an extra electoral vote and an extra seat in Congress.
Yep.
That's how that works.
Yeah,
and that's not great.
No.
Right? So it doesn't matter if these people actually vote or not. You have to literally change the law.
Yeah.
You have to change the census law, and nobody's done it yet, by
No.
the way. As far as 2030 comes around, it's still going to be the same as it is now.
Well, I know that there are several congressmen who want to address that just because specifically of the last 4 years of illegal activity coming across the border. So I know that it's on their radar. I think it's kind of a first steps first, like you mentioned earlier. We've got to cut off the flow. We've got to see where we're at, and then we can start incrementally working on all of these policies and get them implemented.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be like we're attacking it from 2 points right now. One will be the deportations,
Right.
And I'm talking about getting ready for the 2030 census. One will be the deportations, because right now what the Democrats want to do is what Reagan did to California.
Yeah.
Amnesty, or at least get them counted in 2030.
Yeah.
To permanently turn this country blue. The right number of deportations plus some kind of law about verifying citizenship during the census will cut that off.
Yeah.
Right. Which is you'll see Democrats fight hard to stop either of those things from happening. Which is they're fighting the deportations right now. Man, although the hills they're choosing to die on are very bizarre to me.
Yeah,
like you're picking the worst dude.
The worst of the worst.
Just if they shouldn't even be talking about that guy. If you want to make the case, and look, the law is the law, and they're wrong on it. But if you wanted to make the case about something that you think should change, deporting U.S. citizen babies would be the one I would focus on, frankly, because it hits people.
There's an easier target, right?
Yeah, but like if you go out into public right now and have a conversation with somebody about this stuff, whether they're left or right, the average person, you start showing them, like, hey, have you seen the body cam footage of this woman, his wife, crying because she's just gotten her ass kicked by him again and again and again? Like, this is the guy you're protecting? They're like, well,
The Maryland man.
It's like, that's a weird hill to die on.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Or to take the time to go down to free him from prison, right? I mean
yeah. What was?
And he had people in his state who had been murdered, and he never reached out to any of those families.
Yeah.
It's mind blowing. It's mind numbing.
Somebody was God, who was it? I just saw him today. Oh yeah, Murphy. In Congress, Patrick Murphy, I think his name is. Not Patrick. What's his name? Is it Chris Murphy?
Where's he from?
Senator Chris Murphy from New York. but he's a Connecticut senator. He's from New York. Was trying to grill Kristi Noem earlier, like, the Supreme Court says you've got to get this guy back. What steps are you taking? She goes, well, he's a El Salvadoran citizen.
Yeah.
We can't just kidnap him.
Right.
The El Salvadoran president has said no, and that's the end of the conversation. But the Supreme Court said, well, it's the Supreme Court of the United States, not of El Salvador, fuckface.
Yeah.
Like, do you really not know how the law works?
Go ahead and talk to that
oh
president.
my God. I mean, they won't, because Bukele will just make fun of them on Twitter, to be fair. Like, he's just trolling people on Twitter
hilarious.
at this point. Yeah, he's like a little Latinx Trump. It's really funny.
Yeah.
Doesn't care. We're working on getting some interviews with him right now, actually. He's
that would be awesome.
He decided that he was going to turn the murder capital of the world into a safe country to live, and he did it in 5 years. And he did it not in the despotic way necessarily. Like, if this was a Southeast Asian country, they would have just killed everybody. Like Singapore, you should go look up Singapore's laws at some point. You show up with the wrong attitude over there, you're done.
You're gone.
Like, they'll either cane you or literally murder you for simple possession of marijuana. You die. First offense. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is just to round up all the violent people and put them in prison. And it's that seems like a reasonable thing to do, to be honest.
My brother served his mission in Salvador.
It used to be rough down there.
Yeah, it was extremely rough.
For a long time, too.
He was escorted out of neighborhoods at gunpoint. Yeah. And he didn't know who was escorting him. But they walked them out of neighborhoods.
Well, I mean, twice. Even then, if you're a Christian missionary or LDS missionary, they're not going to let you get messed with down there.
No.
Because it's a bad look. Even the old administrations wouldn't allow that.
Yeah.
Because it makes them look bad, because they're all Catholic down there, too. So he was still, though, that's a wild place to be.
Yeah. My other brother was in Nicaragua and said some of the same things. I mean, it's leveled out a little bit, but the Shining Light and a bunch of the other little militant groups that were down there, yeah, they were pretty interesting. He's the one that went to Border Patrol. They're
all being put on notice right now, and I think I'm really hoping that Venezuela comes around as well, because it is a beautiful country and
a rich country.
Rich. I mean, there's the fact that just a couple of years ago they had 2,700% inflation. If you can take a country whose entire value is based on one of the most needed commodities on earth, and it is also a rich country, and mess it up that badly, then you know it's been done incorrectly. Like, there's no debate to be had there, right? It's basically just the patrician class leeching wealth out of the population, which is what happens in any communist organization, right? And it's really sad too. It's sad.
Well, I think that it's even happening here.
Oh, sure, yeah, 100%. But that Venezuela should be the Kuwait of South America, or the Bahrain of South America, right? I mean, it should be there should be no problems, and their neighbors also shouldn't have any problems.
They should be able to take care of everybody with their wealth.
Yeah, there's, that's the. It's always the problem. We have these problems no matter where we are in the world, and sometimes, it's. The things you have to do to sort those things out are, in the near term, pretty unpopular, to be honest.
Nobody wants to suffer in any way. Nobody wants to be inconvenienced. We're seeing that right now with the tariffs, where I feel like they're kind of overplaying their hand in that as well. Just trying to – I've got a conference call later. No, it's going to be Monday or Tuesday with a group of people to just talk about the overall effect. I believe Senator Cruz is going to be participating in this as well, but just talking about the overall long-term effect of requiring fair play, right? But it also has so much to do with our national debt because of our trade, the amount that we spend overseas rather than spend it here, our trade imbalances, and the fact that we're sending money to maintain people and governments all over the world through U.S. aid and other groups that are acting as fronts and our money laundering operations.
Yeah, I think, a lot of this is just a lack of financial literacy, and this is how governments have always operated. I mean, the Catholic Church kept the Bible strictly in Latin for 1,000 years.
So that people couldn't understand it.
Because if you need to come to God, you got to go through me, right? And then the King James Version obviously upended that.
Yep.
And they weren't too thrilled about that. They weren't too thrilled about the COE in general, I would imagine, but certainly not about that part. And, we did that with information for a very long time of any sort. And now we're doing it. I think I really do believe that American education is intentionally designed to create financial illiteracy. I mean, you go through high school and tell me what you learned about balancing your own personal finances.
Yeah.
You learned nothing about it, not one thing. And I'll tell you, when you're in a period of rapid inflation, which we have been, by the way, for 25 years, it wasn't just Biden. It cooled under Trump, but from 2000 to December 2024, it was 78% inflation, which is way too high, by about a third or more, right, depending on which measure you like to calculate by. But when you have a period of devaluation of your currency, one of the things that you can do, other than create a recession, which also works, right? One of the other things you can do to back that up is to bring more of your currency that's floating around in the international market back to you.
Yeah.
Which is to say, raise tariffs on other countries so they have to spend U.S. dollars back into our economy.
Right.
That's one of this is basic economics.
Our energy policy, right? Exporting energy.
Just becoming a net exporter.
Yes.
It's not like energy security is national security. That's a fact, because economic security and every single thing on Maslow's hierarchy of needs is directly affected by your energy production.
100%.
So that's all part of it, but it also is one of the best ways you can bring money back, like your own U.S. dollars. We don't care about yuan or any of that stuff. Or yen. We don't care about that. We want U.S. dollars back into our economy.
Our oil exports were up under Trump. Our natural gas was exported. I mean, there are 2 or 3 different companies in Texas alone that were exporting liquid gases to the European market, and those exports were cut off during the Biden administration. So allowing that energy to flow freely again will bring those dollars back to the United States.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like
We recognize in our community, if I could just hit on that financial literacy real quick, we recognized in Yuma. And so 2 of the local banks actually hired somebody individually to go into the schools to start teaching financial literacy, because they weren't being taught anything. They didn't understand a checkbook. They didn't understand how to get a loan. They didn't understand any of the basic kind of requirements to integrate into society. So we were producing, like you said, people coming out of schools with absolutely no understanding of what it is to be financially responsible.
It's a big problem for the military, to be honest, because some people like myself, I went to school first and then joined later, but the bulk of the force goes in at 17, 18, 19, and they've never done anything in real life before, and they go into a socialist system, which is what the military is by design, right? And the reason for it isn't to be a detriment to you. It's to take care of everything for you so you can just focus on fighting. That's what it's supposed to be. A distracted soldier is a dead soldier, right? So health care, housing, all that stuff's taken care of. They have TSP, Thrift Savings Plan, which is an investment. They have a life insurance policy for you, everything, right? They take care of almost everything for you.
My oldest son is down in Del Rio in flight school.
Oh, nice. Good for him. Has he gotten assigned to Bird yet, or is he still in the early part?
He's still in early. He'll probably be at the KC-135 as a refueler.
Oh, that'd be dope, yeah.
Yeah, so...
Hopefully he doesn't get stuck on drones, to be honest, because that does happen from time to time.
No, he's doing really well. Just passed his second phase, so he's got formation left.
Is he Air Force or Navy?
Air Force.
Oh, nice.
And then he'll go up to Oklahoma and end up at the KC-135. But I asked him, he told me he wanted to serve, told me he wanted to be his pilot, but I asked him to finish school first.
Yeah.
He took off 1 year, worked for me at the state party, and sacrificed that. That was even after his mission. But now he goes into it with his eyes wide open.
Yeah, prepared. Yeah, we don't do much. There's a lot of stuff to help you reintegrate when you leave them, a lot more than when I got out. But, you know, to be honest, I think the last 6 months you're in the military, you should be getting schooled up on how to be an adult. Because even guys that go for 20 and retire, a lot of those dudes get out and they're 40 years old and you're retired technically at 40. You got to do something because you've been an A-type your whole life. You're not going out and sitting on the couch for the next 40 years and waiting to die. That's not going to happen, right?
Well, while I was chairman of the economic development company or corporation in our county, one of the things that we did is we worked with the military in a bridge program.
Skill bridge thing?
Skill bridge.
Yeah.
So anybody that had, 6 months to a year left, we made those programs available through Arizona Western College and facilitated. And what they were trying to do locally is entice more of them to get the skills needed and hopefully stay in the community after having been there for 3 years or whatever. And some coming back for their second 3-year, rotation.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, there's another example of how there's a duality. So it's not just that the individuals could use your help; it's that they're a value add.
Yeah.
All you have to do is put them in the right spot with the right information, and they will bring value no matter where they
100%.
are. So we're doing a disservice to them, but also to the community by not taking somebody who is self-motivated and honorable and giving them tools. That's like this is the story of the Jewish soldiers at the water, and the ones that are cupping water into their mouths while they keep their eye on the horizon. Those are the ones, the 300 that you choose, right?
Yeah, I love that story.
Yeah.
Yep. I hired an Army Ranger to be my chief of staff politically. Best decision that I ever made.
Yeah.
And continue to look for those types of individuals to put in responsibilities where they understand accountability, they understand the responsibility, and they're not going to let you down.
Yeah, and they'll never quit.
No.
Most importantly, probably they'll find it's being a complex problem solver is a rare thing in life, because how do you even learn how to do that? The only way to learn how to do it is to be forced to do it.
Yeah.
So you either come from a problematic childhood, which a lot of special operators do actually, which is why they become good at what they do, or you have to jump headfirst into that stuff and figure it out.
Yeah.
So what's on the horizon for you guys out there? What do you got next?
Well, first and foremost for us, I think finalizing the integration of all of the tools that the president has deployed to the border is critical. One of the things that Biden did is he pulled out all of the infrastructure for the cameras and for the fiber network. So getting that completed so that we can ensure that all of the tools have been deployed for state, local, and federal, and that they have all the resources they need. It's also a safety issue there for the local community. I think that's first and foremost, and then being able to sustain it long term. What I'd like to see ultimately is that our border security, our national security, not necessarily new laws, but that there is a resolution to. There's two different things that need to happen. First, reform our immigration policies, right? Because they really haven't been touched in 40 or 50 years. But second, ultimately, to hold people accountable for coming into the United States illegally, and to have real consequences, whether they're returned immediately or a lifetime ban and being able to come in.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't think we solve any of these problems long term.
Yeah, this idea of like due process. The due process was that the law said don't come into the country, and you did it.
Right.
And we caught you.
Right. There's consequences. There has to be consequences. Yeah.
I mean, that is due process. You were informed that you're not allowed to do this, and you did it anyways. It's not like an eyeball witness saw you somewhere stealing a candy bar. Like, well, I saw him, and you have to have a jury trial for it. It's like, no, you are either here or you are not here.
Right.
The end, my friend.
You came across illegally.
Yeah.
There has to be a consequence.
Yeah, unless you can prove that somebody launched you in with a trebuchet against your will or something, that I'm sorry but you being here is the evidence, and the due process is the law existing in the first place.
Although we did just arrest a lady last week who was a U.S. citizen for drugging a child and bringing the child into the United States.
Oh, God.
So we didn't even really touch on the human trafficking element, but that was huge. There's almost 400,000 kids that are still unaccounted for under the previous administration, and one of my friends had been assigned to work under RFK through Health and HHS, Health and Human Services. He just established the framework, and in his first 90 days on the job was able to locate about 80,000 of the kids that have been trafficked into the United States. So now at this time we've got just over 300,000, and they need to be found, and they need to be restored to their families or restored to their countries of origin.
Yeah, there's so first of all, Americans are the largest consumers of sex trafficked people on earth. It's not one of these other countries. It's American citizens.
Yep.
Whether here or abroad.
Yep.
Mostly here, actually, though. There's about 45 million people in sexual slavery globally right now, which is more human beings that have ever been enslaved at any point ever. And we do very little about it. I mean, even we know the pipelines that happen for it. The cartels get 14 or so people over. They put them in a stash house, rape and drug them for 2 weeks, and then they send them out to wherever they're going to end up permanently.
Yeah.
We know that this is happening.
Yes.
And the Biden administration did not one thing. Not one thing. They didn't. There wasn't any kind of major raid that happened on one of those stash houses that I'm familiar with.
National Sheriff's Association said that prostitution increased 100-fold under the last administration, or 100%. I forget the exact term that they used, but my sheriff sits on that board, and it has become a scourge of our nation. And again, that is the cartels, just like you mentioned, using some of their same established distribution routes for their narcotics to then smuggle in these individuals and take advantage of them. But there has to be consequences, right?
Yeah. Without them, whatever. I talk about this a lot, just from law enforcement perspective or judicial perspective, either one. The sign of a good law is clear, concise, enforceable. Clear, and that it's obvious what it applies to. Concise, and it only applies to that one thing. And enforceable, in that it has consequences, teeth. Otherwise, you've just written some dumb shit on paper that nobody cares about.
That will be contested.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, just put gun-free zone on the front of your building and see if that stops guns from coming in.
Right.
Right? Like a metal detector would help. That's a consequence, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, look, I appreciate you coming today.
Appreciate you having me. Thank
show.
you.
Yeah, this is border security is it's insane that this is a debate, to be honest. I mean, are you a country without a secure border?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
You're just like a port. You know what I mean?
Welcoming people, right?
Yeah.
And thank you for your service. Appreciate that.
For sure, yeah.
I know it's frustrating sometimes, but thank you.
Yeah, I mean, this is my country.
Yeah.
If I was in some other country, I'd fight for that one too. It's just the way, that before nuclear weapons existed, that was mutually assured destruction. Right. I knew that if I stepped into another man's country, he would come after me if I did something that was wrong. And that's the way things should be.
Yes.
Right?
100%.
That's the way I feel. Anyways, thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Great conversations. Everybody go check out. Well, tell everybody where they can find you, actually, if they want to check out.
It's just JW Lines on Instagram. I really, that's the one thing. I'm not out there doing anything other than sharing this message that we've got to secure the border and that we've got to take it back, take control back from the cartels and institute policies that will preserve the integrity of our country for the next generation. I've got 11 kids. I want them to enjoy the same freedoms that I have. So it's time to step up and get something done.
The shade, what's that? A society grows great when old men plant trees in whose shade they shall never sit.
Yep. 100%.
So that's words to live by there, everybody. Make sure you check out Jonathan Lines, and good resource for border security information. I appreciate you coming today.
Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you all for watching and listening. It's been Citizen.